You will hear a woman phoning about the shared house she is going to move into. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 7.
Hello?
Hello, this is Hilary. I'm calling about the house. I'm moving in next week.
Oh, yes, Hilary. This is Judith. I met you when you came to look at the house.
Yes, I just had a few more questions I wanted to ask.
Of course.
Well, first, about the rent. I realise I didn't check what it included.
Yes, that's important. It includes most things. We don't have to pay extra for heating, for example, just for the telephone, which is fair enough, I suppose. Local taxes are part of the rent, so that's not a worry.
That's fine. Then I remember I should have sent my letter of reference to the landlord by now, but I haven't got his address.
Yes, you should get that off right away. Address it to Mr. Crawley. He's at 14 King Street.
Is that in Exford?
Yes. And then you'll need to put the postcode, of course. It's AP12 7QT.
Got that, thanks. I also realise I don't know exactly what the house has in the way of equipment. Is there a microwave, for example?
There isn't. None of us feels the need.
Oh, fine. I'm sure I can do without one too. What about a hairdryer?
Maybe you should bring one, if you need one.
I'll buy one, yes. And TV?
Oh, yes. We've got 2, in fact. Was there anything else?
I just wondered if there were any rules.
Not really. We share the cleaning, things like that. We do have to be careful about loud music.
Yes.
So we've agreed that there shouldn't be any loud music after 9, and that we don't play music at all in the living room after 10. Up to 11 in your own room's okay, as long as it's not too noisy.
That sounds good. And is there somewhere safe I can keep my bike?
That's difficult. To be honest, lots do get stolen round here. We haven't got a garage, so we tend to park ours in the garden so that they're hidden from the street.
OK.
Now, I hope you like cooking.
Yes, I do. Do you all have shared meals?
Not very often, actually. But when the weather's good in the summer, we like to have a barbecue together, which we do each Wednesday. We tend to go out at weekends.
Sounds fun.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Are you familiar with this area?
A bit. Actually, there are a few things that I'd like to know the location of. A bank, for example.
Yes, there's one quite close. You just go up to the junction near the house, the one where 4 roads meet, and go straight ahead and then take the second left. It's a little way down there on the left-hand side.
That's convenient. Another thing is that I'd like to check my emails quite often. I was wondering how far away an internet cafe was.
Well, there are a couple actually, but one's much cheaper than the other. The one I use is very handy. You just go up to the big junction and then, well, I go straight ahead and then turn right so that it's on the right-hand side.
Fine. And one last thing.
Uh-huh.
I need to go to the post office quite often. I'm hoping there's one quite close to the house.
You're in luck. You'd walk up to the big junction and then, if you want a nice route, take the street that's slightly to the right. Then you'd want the second left, and you'd find it on the right side of the street.
Well, it all sounds great.
So, we'll see you in a couple of days' time?
Yes. OK. Bye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a lecturer discussing the possibility of creating nuclear fusion.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
We look at the sun, a huge ball streaming out essentially limitless energy into space, and we think about how we need that energy here on Earth. Our oil reserves are running out, coal burning causes much pollution, and nuclear energy has many dangers. But where does the sun itself get its energy? The answer is that the sun makes it using fusion, or, more specifically, in a hydrogen fusion process. There is no pollution, no radioactivity, no waste products, and we have plenty of hydrogen. So, hydrogen fusion seems the perfect answer to our energy needs, and scientists have long attempted to achieve it here on Earth. So what happens during this process? The first step is to make two light atomic particles approach. In the case of our sun, these are hydrogen particles, the lightest and also the easiest to deal with. However, the problem is that the nuclei of atoms have electric fields, and fusion between these particles is opposed by their similar electric charge. They most naturally repel each other, and the nuclei of all elements are exactly the same in this respect. Thus, in order to overcome this repulsion and force them together, in the second step, the particles are heated. The trouble is, you need a lot of heat, incredible temperatures of the sort only seen on the surface of the sun. This is many millions of degrees, far higher than the melting point of any known material. Still, the concept is simple. The hot, wildly moving particles, which are now called plasma, will crash into each other, resulting in the third step, the fusion into helium, which releases energy and begins a self-sustained process.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
So, we know how fusion works. Thus, the big question is, can we create it here on Earth? We actually have the technology to superheat hydrogen into plasma, but no container on Earth can deal with those temperatures. Thus, we need to confine this superheated material so that it doesn't touch anything. For that, we need a special reactor, and most research has focused on an apparatus known as a tokamak system. That's Tokamak, an acronym from some Russian words meaning toroidal chamber with magnetic field. It's an apt name, since a very powerful magnetic field is used to confine and suspend the superhot plasma in the air so that it doesn't touch anything. This is possible only because this plasma has an electric charge, which interacts with the magnetic field. Of course, the walls of the fusion vessel will still get hot, very hot, and to avoid being melted, they must be cooled with a cryogenic system to intensely low temperatures. But now we are faced with the second problem. If we are to draw power from this system, the reaction must be continuous and controllable. However, when fusion begins, the plasma becomes unstable, and at these temperatures, that is a very serious situation. If we lose control, a disaster could result. Despite the obstacles, in 2010, a European device managed some success, but needed far more power to generate the fusion reaction than that produced from the fusion itself. Obviously then, it was not useful as a power source. More to the point, this system could only sustain a fusion reaction for a fraction of a second, yet, to self-sustain, the fusion needs to run for at least 10 seconds. And the future looks bleak. Unfortunately, most scientists predict that many decades will have to pass before fusion power can become a practical reality.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will now listen to a talk on bicycles.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Today, we're going to talk about the latest bikes for professionals and novices. There's something to suit everyone from price to function. The Atlantis is a touring frame. It's also perfect for commuting and trail riding, and anything short of super fast road riding. The tubes are stout, to take touring loads and trail abuses. The tyre clearances are majestic, so you can fit tyres up to 2.35 inches. It's designed for cantilevers or V-brakes. If you have to limit yourself to just one bike and you want to be able to ride just about anywhere, this is the bike to be on. It is our most popular model for just that reason, and there isn't an unhappy Atlantis owner in the land. The Rambouillet, our all-around road bike, is available either as a frame with fork and headset for $1,400 or as a complete bike for $2,300. Compared to the Atlantis, it is a lighter frame, not intended for loaded touring or rough trail riding. As a road bike, it has side-pull brakes. The Quick Beam is our version of the single-speed bike. We've done it a little better though. The crankset has a 42-34 combination, running an 18-toothed freewheel cog in the rear. And the rear hub is threaded opposite the drive side, so you can install a fixed cog of your own choice. In essence, you can have 4 speeds on the Quick Beam if you choose. The Quick Beam is available as a frame with fork and headset for $900, or as a complete bike for $1,300. This is a rugged, versatile bike that you can ride on the road as well as on rough trail.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
The Saluki is our roadish, light-touring, randonneuring frame. It's designed for 650B wheels. If 650B means anything to you, you'll either love it or think it's marketing suicide. If you're new to 650B and a follower, you won't want it. If you're new and a rebel, you will. Now, I'll just talk a little about saddle comfort. The road bike, for the most part, has turned into a high-tech, uncomfortable machine, and the proof is all around us. Look through any bike magazine or catalogue and you'll see the saddle up to 6 inches higher than the handlebars. It is impossible to be comfortable on such a bike. It forces you to lean forward, putting more weight on your groin, hands and arms. People ride these bikes with straight, locked-out arms and wake up with aching backs. They endure it, get used to it, or buy recumbents. When we custom design a bike for you, you'll be able to get a comfortable position. Your back will be between 45 and 50 degrees, and there will be a noticeable bend in the arms. And most importantly, your arms won't be supporting your body weight. You won't have to look up to look ahead, because you won't be hunched over and low. That means our bikes are more accessible for riding on the flats, or even for short climbs. We consider this when we design and build your custom frame.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. You will hear a lecture about sports.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Not all people like to work, but everyone likes to play. As sports help people live happily, they help to keep people healthy and feeling good. When people are playing games, they move a lot. This is good for their health. Having fun with their friends makes them happy. So all over the world, men and women, boys and girls enjoy sports. Since long ago, adults and children have called their friends together to spend hours, even days, playing games. Sports usually take a variety of forms. Organised competitions, which draw huge crowds to cheer their favourite team to victory, athletic games, played for recreation anywhere sufficient space is found, and hunting and fishing. Most sports are seasonal, so that what is happening in sports depends on the time of the year. As sports change with the season, people often do not play the same games in winter as in summer. If you want to know what others' favourite sports are, first of all, you should find where they live. Generally speaking, people in hot areas are fond of swimming, while people in cold places love skiing or skating. In this case, surfing is believed to be an important sport in Hawaii. The Pacific Ocean sends huge waves up on the beaches, waves that are just right for surfing. Some sports, including wrestling, boxing, horse racing, etc., are called spectator sports. as the number of spectators greatly exceeds the number of players in the game. Other sports are called participant sports, drawing a crowd of onlookers only on special occasions, such as tournaments. Some sports are commercial and professional, with players who are paid for their participation and with audiences who pay admission to watch.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.